Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty and watched the stars through the big windows. The ship was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines. His crew was doing their normal work, checking systems and making sure everything was running right. It was a peaceful day in space, which was rare for a human military ship. Jake was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started beeping. The sound made everyone on the bridge look up from their work. Lieutenant Dan Miller ran over to his station and started typing fast on his computer. "Captain, we're getting a signal," Dan said. His voice was worried. "It's coming from the Kepler 442 system. It's really far away from here." Jake put down his coffee cup and walked over to Dan's station. "What kind of signal?" "It's a distress call, sir. But it's not like anything I've ever heard before." Commander Lisa Brooks came running onto the bridge. She was the ship's expert on alien species and languages. Her job was to talk to other kinds of life forms that weren't human. She'd been studying alien languages for 10 years. "Let me hear it," Lisa said as she sat down at her computer. Strange signal played through the ship's speakers. Sounded like music mixed with crying. The sound was beautiful, but also very sad. Made everyone on the bridge feel uncomfortable. Lisa worked on her computer for several minutes. The signal through different programs that helped translate alien languages. Her face got more worried as she worked. "Captain, this is from something called the Veltar," she said. "I've never heard of them before, but I can understand some of their language. They're asking for help." "What kind of help?" Jake asked. Lisa played the message again and listened carefully. "They say something is attacking their home world. They call the attackers the Krillian Swarm. The Veltar don't know how to fight. They say they have no weapons and no soldiers." Jake felt his stomach get tight. In his 20 years as a soldier, he had seen many wars. But there was something about this message that made him feel different. The voices in the signal sounded like children asking for help. "How far away is the Kepler system?" Jake asked. 3 weeks at top speed, sir," Dan answered Jake. Thought about it. His fleet was already busy patrolling the outer edge of human space. They were supposed to watch for pirates and other dangers. But this distress call was different. These aliens were asking for help against something they couldn't fight. "Get me Admiral Pete Johnson on the communication system," Jake said. A few minutes later, Admiral Johnson's face appeared on the big screen. He was on his ship, the UES Thunderstrike, which was the biggest and strongest ship in their fleet. The Admiral looked tired. He had been commanding fleets for 30 years. "What's the situation, Captain?" the Admiral asked. Jake told him about the distress signal. Lisa played the translated message for the Admiral. As he listened, the Admiral's face got serious. "The Krillian Swarm," the Admiral said quietly. "I've heard reports about them from other parts of the galaxy. They attack peaceful worlds and take everything. They don't leave anything alive. Sir, these Veltar sound like they can't defend themselves at all," Lisa said. "From what I can translate, they've never had a war. They don't even understand what fighting means." The Admiral was quiet for a long time. Jake knew he was thinking about all the risks. The Kepler system was far away. If they went there, they would leave their patrol area empty. But Jake also knew that the Admiral was a good man who didn't like to see innocent people get hurt. "Send me everything you have on this signal," the Admiral said. "I need to talk to the other ship captains." An hour later, all the ship captains in the fleet were talking on the communication system. There were 12 destroyers, 6 cruisers, 2 battleships, and the Admiral's dreadnought. It was a strong fleet, but not huge. Captain Beth Turner, from the EU's Defiance, spoke first. "If half of what we've heard about the Krillian Swarm is true, we might be flying into a trap." "But these Veltar sound completely helpless," said Captain Tony Garcia from the UES Falcon. "What kind of species never learns to fight?" Dr. Amy Carter, the fleet's chief medical officer, was listening from her ship's medical bay. "I've been studying the data Lisa sent me. The Veltar seem to be made of some kind of crystal material. Their voices suggest they communicate through sound vibrations. If they evolved on a peaceful world, they might never have needed to develop weapons or military tactics." Jake thought about Earth, his home world. Humans had learned to fight because they had to. Earth was a dangerous place with big storms, earthquakes, and wild animals that tried to eat people. Humans became strong because their world was hard, Admiral Jake said. If these beings never learn to fight, they'll all die if we don't help them. The Admiral made his decision. All ships change course for the Kepler 442 system, maximum speed. We're going to help the Veltar, as the fleet turned toward the distant star system. Jake felt both excited and worried. He didn't know what they would find when they got there, but he knew that humans had always protected those who couldn't protect themselves. It was what made them different from many other species in the galaxy. The ships jumped into faster-than-light travel, and the stars outside became long streaks of light. They were racing through space to save a species they had never met, against an enemy they barely understood, but that was what humans did. When someone asked for help, humans answered. The human fleet moved through space toward the Kepler system. Inside the ships, the crews were getting ready for what might be a big fight. But they were also learning more about why humans were different from other species in the galaxy. Lieutenant Don Miller was in the Marine training room with his squad. 20 soldiers sat in chairs while Dan stood in front of a big screen. The screen showed pictures of different alien species from around the galaxy. Listen up, everyone, Dan said. We need to talk about what makes us special, not because we think we're better than others, but because we need to understand why the Admiral thinks we can help these Veltar. He pushed a button, and the screen showed a picture of Earth. It looked blue and green and beautiful, but Dan knew the truth about their home world. Earth is what the galactic community calls a Class 12 death world, Dan explained. That means it's one of the most dangerous planets that has intelligent life. Most aliens come from nice, safe worlds where nothing tries to hurt them. Private Nick Anderson raised his hand. What makes Earth so dangerous, Lieutenant? Dan smiled. Everything. We have storms that can destroy cities. We have earthquakes that can split the ground open. We have volcanoes that can block out the sun. We have wild animals that hunt humans for food. We have diseases that can kill millions of people. The soldiers looked at each other. They'd all grown up on Earth, so this seemed normal to them. But here's the important part, Dan continued. All of that danger made us strong. While other species were living peaceful lives, humans were learning to survive. We learned to hunt. We learned to fight. We learned to never give up, even when things looked hopeless. Sergeant Kelly White, who had been a soldier for 15 years, spoke up. I remember when I first met aliens at the space station on Mars. They couldn't believe that humans evolved, alongside big predators like lions and bears. They were scared just thinking about it. Don nodded. That's right. Most species evolved. On worlds where the biggest danger was maybe running out of food, they never had to worry about something trying to eat them while they slept. He changed the picture on the screen to show different alien species. There were tall, thin beings with big eyes. There were small, furry creatures that looked like they would be scared of their own shadows. There were floating jellyfish-like aliens that lived in gas clouds. All of these species are smart, Dan said. Some of them are smarter than humans. But when danger comes, they panic. Yeah. Their first thought is to run away or hide. Our first thought is to fight. Private Lisa Chang, who was new to the squad, asked, Is that why other species are afraid of us? Some of them are, Dan admitted. When humans first joined the galactic community 20 years ago, many aliens were worried. They couldn't understand how we could be so calm when talking about violence and war. To them, we seemed like monsters. Captain Jake Morrison was having a similar conversation with his officers in the ship's meeting room. Commander Lisa Brooks was there, along with Chief Engineer Rick Sullivan and Dr. Amy Carter. The Veltar represents something we rarely see in the galaxy, Lisa said. A species that has lived for 50,000 years without any war or violence. They don't even have words for many concepts that we consider basic. Dr. Carter was reading reports on her tablet. From what I can understand, the Veltar are made of a crystal-like material. They grow instead of being born like mammals. They create beautiful music and art, but they have no weapons, no military, and no understanding of tactics or strategy. Rick Sullivan, who had been quiet, finally spoke. It sounds nice, but how did they survive for so long without learning to defend themselves? Their world apparently has no dangerous animals, Lisa explained. No natural disasters, no diseases. It's like a perfect garden world where nothing bad ever happens. Jake thought about this. Until now. Until now, Lisa agreed. The Krillian. Swarm found them, and the Veltar don't know what to do. They tried to communicate with the Krillians. They offered them gifts and sang songs for them. What happened? Dr. Carter asked. The Krillians started harvesting them like crops, Lisa said quietly. The room got very quiet. All of the humans felt angry when they heard this. It was a natural human reaction to feel protective of innocent beings. Meanwhile, far away in the Kepler system, the situation was getting worse. The Veltar were trying to understand what was happening to them, but their minds couldn't process the concept of deliberate cruelty. Elder Velshantar stood in the Crystal City center as Krillian ships flew overhead. The ships looked like giant insects with long tentacles. They were taking crystal formations from the ground and loading them into their cargo holds. Other Veltar came to the Elder, their crystal bodies ringing like bells as they moved. Their sounds were full of confusion and fear. Elder, why do the visitors take our home crystals? One asked. We offered them our finest songs, but they do not listen. They do not seem to understand our gift offerings, another said. Perhaps they do not appreciate beauty. The Elder's crystal body pulsed. With sad colors? In 50,000 years of existence, the Veltar had never encountered beings who took without asking, who destroyed without creating, who caused pain without purpose. I do not understand these visitors, the Elder admitted. They do not respond to friendship. They do not accept our gifts. They take our people and our crystals, but they give nothing back. Young Veltar were disappearing. The crystal nurseries where new Veltar grew were being stripped bare. The Krillian harvester ships moved across the planet like a disease, taking everything of value back on the human ships. The crews were pushing their engines harder than they were supposed to. Chief Engineer Rick Sullivan was working 8-hour days to keep the ships moving at maximum speed. And how much longer until we reach the Kepler system? Captain Jake asked. 18 days if the engines hold together, Rick answered. But sir, we're pushing these ships beyond their safe limits. Something breaks, we might not be able to fix it. Jake thought about the Veltar, their peaceful crystal cities being destroyed while the humans traveled through space. Keep pushing. Rick, those people need our help, and every day we're late means more of them die. The human fleet continued racing through the darkness between stars, carrying the galaxy's most dangerous species toward its most innocent ones. Neither group knew what would happen when they met, but the humans were determined to find out. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler system. What they saw made even the hardest soldiers feel sick to their stomachs, Captain. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty and stared at the main screen. The Veltar homeworld, which should have been a beautiful crystal planet, was half dark. Giant bioships floated around it like vultures around a dead animal. Each ship was as big as a city and looked like it was made of black metal and living tissue. My God, Commander Lisa Brooks whispered. There are so many of them. Admiral Pete Johnson's voice came through the communication system from his flagship. All ships, battle stations, were going in. Jake could see dozens of Krillian ships of different sizes. The biggest ones were the bioships that looked like floating cities. Smaller ships moved back and forth between the big ships and the planets. Surface. They were carrying cargo that Jake didn't want to think about. Lieutenant Dan Miller was at his station, counting the enemy ships. Captain, I count 47 Krillian vessels. We have 19 ships. Those aren't good odds, Commander. Tony Garcia said over the radio from his fighter squadron. Jake looked at his crew. They all looked worried, but none of them looked like they wanted to run away. This was what made humans different. When they saw something wrong, they wanted to fix it, even if it was dangerous. All ships. This is Admiral Johnson, the Admirals. Voice filled the bridge. We're going to split into 3 groups. Captain Morrison, take your destroyers and hit the outer ships. Captain Turner, take the cruisers and attack the left flank. I'll take the battleships straight at their main fleet. Jake felt his heart beating faster. This was the kind of fight that other species would avoid. The humans were outnumbered more than 2-1. They were going to fight anyway. "You heard the Admiral," Jake told his crew. "Let's show these Krillians what humans can do." Human ships spread out and moved toward the enemy fleet. The Krillians seemed surprised that such a small force would attack them. They had probably never seen anyone crazy enough to fight when they were so outnumbered. The space battle started when the human ships got close enough to use their weapons. Laser beams and missile trails filled the space between the two fleets. The Krillian bioships fired back with weapons that looked like living tentacles covered in electricity. Commander Tony Garcia led his fighter squadron between the big ships. His fighters were small and fast, which made them hard to hit. The other galactic species usually fought from far away, but humans like to get close to their enemies. "This is Fighter 1, Tony said over the radio. "I'm seeing weak spots on these bioships. They have nerve clusters near their engines. If we can hit those, we might be able to hurt them." The human fighters dove between the Krillian tentacles like they were flying through a deadly forest, their species would have thought. This was suicide, but human pilots trained for this kind of flying. They had learned to fly through Earth's dangerous storms and around Earth's tall mountains. On the planet's surface, the first group of human Marines was getting ready to land. Colonel Steve Martinez was leading them in armored dropships. As they got closer to the planet, they could see what the Krillians had been doing. The beautiful crystal cities of the Veltar were broken and empty. The Krillians had built big machines that were digging up the crystal formations and loading them onto transport ships. Worse, they could see groups of Veltar being moved around like prisoners. "Marines, remember your training?" Colonel Martinez said over the radio. "These Veltar are innocent people who have never seen war. We need to protect them, not just fight the Krillians." The dropships landed near one of the crystal cities. The Marines ran out and immediately saw something that made them angry. Krillian soldiers, which looked like giant bugs with metal armor, were loading Veltar onto a transport ship. The Veltar were not fighting back. They couldn't understand what was happening to them, Sergeant. Paul Roberts set up a heavy weapon and started shooting at the Krillian soldiers. Marines form a protective line around those civilians. The human soldiers moved quickly to put themselves between the Krillians and the Veltar. This was not normal military tactics. Usually soldiers tried to destroy the enemy's weapons and bases. But the humans were more worried about saving the innocent aliens than winning battles. Private Nick Anderson found a group of young Veltar hiding in a broken crystal building. They were making sad musical sounds, and their crystal bodies were dim with fear. Nick had never seen anything so helpless in his life. "It's okay," he said softly, even though he knew they couldn't understand his words. "We're here to help you." Back in space, the battle was getting more intense. The human ships were smaller than the Krillian bioships, but they were faster and more clever. Captain Jake Morrison ordered his ship to fly directly under one of the big bioships, where its weapons couldn't reach him. "Fire all weapons at the ship's belly," Jake shouted. The EU's Liberty's weapons tore into the bottom of the bioship. Green fluid leaked out like blood. The bioship made a sound like a wail in pain and started to fall toward the planet. But the humans were taking damage too. 2 destroyers had been destroyed and several other ships were badly hurt. The Krillians had more ships and bigger weapons. Dr. Amy Carter was working in the medical bay treating wounded soldiers. She was also studying the data that the Marines were sending from the planet's surface. "Captain," she said over the communication system, "I'm learning something important about the Veltar. Their crystal bodies can make sound vibrations that seem to hurt the Krillians. But the Veltar don't know how to use this as a weapon." Jake thought about this while dodging tentacle weapons from another bioship. "Can we teach them?" "Maybe," Dr. Carter said. "But first, we need to show them that it's okay to fight back. They've never hurt anyone in their entire history." The battle continued to rage around the crystal planet. The humans were fighting harder than they ever had before. Not for territory or resources, but to save a species that represented everything good and innocent in the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison made a decision that would have scared most other species in the galaxy. He was going to ram his ship directly into a Krillian bioship. "All crew, Hold on tight, Jake announced over the ship's speakers. We're going to hit them hard. The EU's Liberty turned toward the biggest Krillian bioship and accelerated to full speed. The alien ship tried to move out of the way, but it was too slow. The human ship crashed into its side like a missile. The collision threw everyone on both. Ships around like toys. But the humans had built their ships to survive crashes. The Krillian bioship started leaking green fluid and spinning out of control. This is insane, Commander Lisa Brooks said as she picked herself up from the floor. No other species fights like this. That's why we're going to win, Jake replied, even though his head was bleeding from hitting a wall. All around the battle zone, other human ships were doing things that the Krillians couldn't understand. Captain Beth Turner flew her cruiser directly through a cloud of Krillian fighter ships, using her ship's armor to smash them like bugs. Commander Tony Garcia landed his damaged fighter on a bioship and started setting off explosives inside. The Krillians were a hive mind, which meant they all thought together like one big brain. But this also meant they expected their enemies to act logically. They couldn't understand why the humans were willing to damage their own ships to hurt the enemy. On the planet's surface, the Marines were learning to fight in a completely new way. Instead of trying to destroy everything, they were trying to protect the Veltar while fighting off the Krillians. Lieutenant Commander Helen Scott led a team of Marines into a Krillian command building. The building was made of black metal and looked like the inside of a giant insect. Most species would have been too scared to go inside, but humans had explored dark caves and deep oceans on Earth. Keep moving, Helen told her team. We need to find their communication center and shut it down. The Marines fought through corridors that were designed for creatures with 6 legs instead of 2, had to crawl through spaces that were too small and climb walls that were too steep. But humans were good at adapting to strange environments. Meanwhile, Private Nick Anderson was still protecting the group of young Veltar he had found. More Krillian soldiers were coming toward them, and Nick was running out of ammunition for his rifle. Come on, he said to himself. Think like a human, not like a soldier. Nick looked around and saw some of the broken crystal formations from the Veltar city. He picked up a large piece of crystal and threw it at the Krillian soldiers. The crystal made a loud ringing sound when it hit the ground. Something amazing happened. The Krillian soldiers stopped moving and started shaking. The sound from the crystal seemed to hurt them. Nick looked at the young Veltar behind him. They were making their own musical sounds, but they were sad sounds, not angry ones. Nick said gently to the young aliens. Can you make that sound louder? The loud ringing sound? The Veltar didn't understand his words, but they could see that he was trying to protect them. Slowly, they began to change their sad music into something stronger. Dr. Amy Carter was monitoring the battle from her medical station when she noticed something strange in the data from the planet. Captain Morrison, she called over the radio. The Veltar can hurt the Krillians with sound, but they need to be brave enough to do it on purpose. Right now, they're too scared. Jake thought about this while his ship continued to fight 3 bioships at once. How do we make them brave? Show them that fighting back is okay, Dr. Carter said. The Veltar have spent 50,000 years believing that violence is always wrong. They need to see that sometimes you have to fight to protect innocent people. Colonel Steve Martinez heard this conversation over his radio. He was leading his Marines in a fight to protect a Veltar nursery where the youngest aliens were kept. All Marines, he announced. New orders. Don't just fight the Krillians. Show the Veltar how to fight back. You need to see that we're not fighting because we like violence. We're fighting because we love peace. This was something that only humans would understand. Most species either fought for conquest or ran away from danger. But humans fought to protect things they cared about. Sergeant Kelly White was fighting alongside a group of adult Veltar when she got the new orders. The Veltar were trying to hide behind her while she shot at Krillian soldiers. No, she said to the Veltar, even though they couldn't understand her words. Don't hide behind me. Stand with me. She showed them how to pick up pieces of their own crystal city and throw them at the Krillians. When the crystals hit the ground, they made the loud ringing sounds that hurt the enemy. Slowly, the Veltar began to understand. They didn't have to hurt the Krillians the way the Krillians hurt them. but they could defend themselves and their families. Back in space, Admiral Pete Johnson was facing the biggest challenge of his career. The main Krillian Queen ship was the size of a small moon, and it was protected by dozens of smaller ships. "Ships, concentrate fire on the Queen ship," the Admiral ordered. But the human weapons weren't strong enough to hurt the massive alien vessel. The Admiral realized that the only way to stop it was to ram his flagship directly into its command center. "Admiral, no," Captain Jake protested over the radio. "There has to be another way." "Captain, you have command of the fleet," Admiral Johnson said calmly. "Take care of those people down there." The UES Thunderstrike, the biggest and strongest ship in the human fleet, turned toward the Queen ship and accelerated to ramming speed. But before the Admiral could complete his sacrifice, something unexpected happened. The Veltar on the planet began to sing together. It wasn't their usual sad music. It was a strong, brave song that rang across the entire planet. The sound was so powerful that it traveled through space and hit the Krillian ships like a weapon. Queen ships started to shake and crack. The smaller bioships began to retreat. The hive mind that controlled the Krillians was being disrupted by the harmonic vibrations of an entire species that had finally learned to defend itself. The tide of battle was turning, but the cost had been high. Many human ships were damaged or destroyed, and many brave soldiers had died. The question now was whether the victory would be worth the price. The Veltar's song grew stronger and stronger. Across their crystal planet, millions of voices joined together in a harmony that had never been heard before. It was not the sad music they usually made. This was the sound of a peaceful people who had finally learned to defend themselves. "Admiral." Pete Johnson stopped his ship just before it would have crashed into the Krillian Queen ship. The massive alien vessel was shaking apart from the Veltar's harmonic weapon. Cracks appeared along its hull and green fluid leaked out like blood. "All ships pull back," the Admiral ordered. "Let the Veltar finish this." Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of his damaged ship as the Krillian fleet began to retreat. The bioships that weren't destroyed were fleeing toward the edge of the star system. The hive mind that controlled them couldn't handle the crystal being's song. "I can't believe it," Commander Lisa Brooks said. "The most peaceful species in the galaxy just defeated one of the most violent," but Jake wasn't celebrating yet. He could see the cost of their victory. The U's Liberty was badly damaged. Two destroyers had been completely destroyed. Many good people had died to save the Veltar. On the planet's surface, Private Nick Anderson was still with the young Veltar he had protected. The crystal beings were no longer making scared sounds. Instead, they were singing along with their people's victory song. But Nick could see that they looked different now. "You're not the same as you were before," he said quietly to them. "And maybe that's not a bad thing." The young Veltar couldn't understand his words, but they seemed to understand what he meant. They had learned that sometimes you had to fight to protect the things you loved. It was a hard lesson for beings who had lived in peace for 50,000 years. Colonel Steve Martinez was helping to count the survivors in the Crystal Cities. Many Veltar had been taken by the Krillians before the humans arrived. The beautiful crystal formations that had taken centuries to grow had been broken and stolen. The planet was saved, but it was also changed forever. Dr. Amy Carter was working with Elder Velshantar, the leader of the Veltar people. The Elder's crystal body was dim with sadness, but also glowing with a new kind of strength. "We understand now why you came to help us," the Elder said through a translation device that Dr. Carter had built. "You knew that peace must be protected, even if protection requires violence." "That's something humans learned a long time ago," Dr. Carter replied. "On our world, we had to fight to survive, but we try to use that strength to help others, not to hurt them." The Elder was quiet for a long time. "We have lost our innocence, but we have gained something else. We have gained the knowledge that we can defend ourselves and others." Captain Beth Turner, who was now commanding the fleet while Admiral Johnson's ship was being repaired, received a report from the scouts. The Krillian ships had left the star system, but they were still out there somewhere in the galaxy.
Ow.
"This won't be the last time," she told her officers. "The Krillians will attack other worlds. Other innocent people will need help. Lieutenant. Don Miller, who had survived the battle but lost many friends, asked the question that everyone was thinking. Will we always have to be the ones who fight? Will there ever be peace in the galaxy? Captain Turner looked out at the stars through the bridge windows. As long as there are people who prey on the innocent, there will need to be people willing to stop them. That's just how the universe works. Over the next few weeks, the human fleet helped the Veltar rebuild their cities and learn how to defend themselves. Dr. Carter worked with Veltar scientists to develop non-lethal defense systems that used their natural harmonic abilities. The crystal beings didn't want to become warriors, but they understood now that they needed to be able to protect themselves. Major Chris Thompson volunteered to stay on the Veltar world with a small group of human soldiers. They would help train the Veltar and watch for signs of new Kryllian attacks. Are you sure about this? Jake asked him, before the fleet prepared to leave. Someone has to stay, Chris replied. These people saved themselves in the end, but they're still learning how to be strong. They need friends who understand both peace and war, as the human fleet prepared to return to their patrol duties. Elder Velshantar asked to speak with all the human commanders one last time. Why did you come to save us? The elder asked. You're strangers to you. You're gained nothing by helping us, and you've lost many of your people. Captain Turner, speaking for all the humans, gave an answer that would become famous throughout the galaxy. Because someone had to help you, and we were here. That's what friends do. The elder's crystal body glowed brightly. Then we are friends forever. When you need help, call to us, and we will answer with our song. As the human ships prepared to leave the Kepler system, they received a new distress signal from a different part of the galaxy. Another peaceful species was under attack by raiders. Another group of innocent people needed help. The crew of every human ship voted on what to do. The vote was unanimous. They would go help. This is what we do, Jake said to his crew as they prepared for another dangerous journey. We stand between the darkness and those who cannot defend themselves. Not easy, and it's not always fair, but it's who we are. The human fleet left the Veltar system and headed toward the new crisis. Behind them, the crystal beings continued their song, but now it was different. It was no longer just beautiful music. It was also a promise to defend their world and help others who needed protection. In the months that followed, other species across the galaxy began to hear stories about the humans and the Veltar. They learned that the galaxy's most dangerous species had chosen to protect its most innocent ones. Some were afraid of human strength, but others began to hope that maybe the universe could be a safer place. The Veltar created a crystal monument to honor the humans who had died saving them. The monument sang continuously, carrying the story of courage and sacrifice across the stars. It reminded everyone who heard it that peace was precious, but it was not free. Someone always had to pay the price to protect it, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the human fleet continued its journey, ready to answer the next call for help.